Alright guys, we are back for the Miami Grand Prix, and this weekend did not disappoint at all. We had a chaotic sprint, a dramatic qualifying, and a race that had a ton of storylines happening at the same time. So let's break it all down. I'm MJ and welcome to MJF1. Welcome to Miami's only practice after several weeks with no Formula One. Mercedes looked ready to continue their strong form, especially with Kimi having won the last 3 races, clearly outperforming his more senior teammate George Russell. After a long break since the Japanese Grand Prix, it's also great to see Ferrari still in the competitive mix, with Leclerc having topped the time boards in practice. Speaking of the mix, all top 4 teams were featured in the top 5. But looking at the average race pace, Mercedes was clearly a step ahead of the rest. But remember, it was only one practice session. Looking at the individual driver's side, I was fairly pleased with Max's race sims. But look how far back Isack sits in the data, a whole second behind Max. It's starting to look like a pattern we've seen before. But let's see how all of this translates into the rest of the weekend. Getting through sprint qualifying on medium tires, I was very impressed with Audi's performance. By the end of the session, they were right on the fringe of the top 10, with Bortoleto and Hülkenberg securing 11th and 12th after SQ2. Moving on to soft tires in SQ3, the closing seconds almost gave us a spectacle, with Kimi Antonelli opting to go as late as possible, meaning everyone else had to set their benchmark lap times on the board for him to beat. But the Papaya boys finally understand that Mercedes engine. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri took provisional pole from George Russell, and Kimi Antonelli only managed to split the McLarens, leaving Oscar Piastri in 3rd. Looking at the drivers' potential qualifying laps, Charles and Oscar actually had enough in their bag to qualify ahead of Kimi, but only by a small margin. Also, look at how much George Russell is leaving on the table compared to Kimi, who is performing consistently. Very interesting. 19 laps to clear on the board. Kimi was probably regretting his first one, as he had a disappointing start while the McLaren boys held it together. Charles Leclerc didn't get his super starts, likely because he was behind Kimi, who had bogged down in his car. Max and Lewis scraped for 6th, but luckily their small contact didn't lead to too much damage, and Lewis Hamilton ended up securing that position. Later on in the race, Kimi Antonelli wanted to have a go at Leclerc, who ended up accusing Kimi of being a terrible wheel-to-wheel racer, which was pretty funny because Kimi never managed to get a pass out of Leclerc. And it was lap 7 when George Russell fancied to pounce on the youngster, who ended up yo-yoing back the position a lap later. And as that happened, a creature of habit was habiting in the background. And of course, he had to give this place back to Lewis. And again, he does it in a way that should make the other driver nervous. I don't know how to explain it. He ends up getting the position back and he gets to keep it. That's a solid performance to me, especially given Ferrari versus Red Bull's performance this season. McLaren secured a 1-2 in what I think was simple effort for Lando Norris, but effort nonetheless. Normal qualifying, which means soft tires throughout, and again, Hülkenberg planted that Audi at the tip of the top 10 in 11th. They did decently this weekend, guys. Q3 was probably one of my favorite sides of the weekend after Kimi set his benchmark lap with 6 minutes left on the clock. 5 drivers failed to beat Kimi or improve their times, except for one driver. He didn't get to beat Kimi, but he got so close and I was very impressed with just 0.166 seconds between them. Looking at the drivers' potential qualifying laps, 4 drivers had the potential to qualify ahead of Max's Red Bull, but couldn't. I also looked at Max and Isack's, Kimi and George's performance disparity, and it looks like George and Isack are experiencing similar domination from their respective teammates. Kicking off the race, Max and Kimi got off so nervously, and this time it didn't stop Leclerc from claiming the lead as Max and Kimi locked up into the turn. Max managed to keep his car on track, but he ended up spinning out trying to get traction. He avoids damage from the chasing pack, but come on, the boy ends up in 11th in lap 1. Kimi fared better, and by lap 4, he was ready to take his position back. After some yo-yo racing, of course. God, I love this concept. And this almost gave Lando a chance to attack Kimi for P2, just before the safety car got called for Isack and Gasly's separate incidents in the same lap. Yikes, that was scary for Gasly, eh? Racing resumed at lap 13 with the field bunched up, and Max had already pitted for hard tires, clearly hoping to go very long. The Mercedes engines started to bully Leclerc as Norris and Kimi found their way around Leclerc, who ended up pitting and rejoining the race in 10th. Meanwhile, Max was putting the hard tires to work. He eventually got up to P1 while everyone else was pitting. His lap 1 misfortune looked like a strategic advantage, but Kimi and Norris had pitted and drove right back behind him with fresher rubber, and they were cooking. Kimi got Max on the outside of a high-speed corner, and a lap later, Norris got his chance to take P2, and the chase for the win was on. Max settled into managing P3, and by lap 46, Charles was back in Max's mirrors, with George and Piastri not that far behind either. I thought to myself, Max was not about to get mugged by 3 guys. Charles and Piastri managed to go through. George Russell just had to say please in Dutch, but he eventually managed, and Max settled for P6. Closing out the race, Piastri chased down Leclerc, and Leclerc ended up having a terrifying spin after being passed. But luckily, he managed to complete the race in 4th. On race pace, Kimi Antonelli is in a league of his own. This kid is seriously quick, and something is definitely happening with George Russell's performance. McLaren also looks like they're going to become a real force in the coming races. And that's a wrap on the Miami Grand Prix. Personally, I love this track. One of my all-time favorite Max wins came from here in 2023, and I'm always glad when F1 rolls into Miami. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, a like goes a long way. Consider subscribing if you want to come along for the rest of the season.